Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the Russian Revolution. We're talking about a chaotic, world-changing event that saw a centuries-old monarchy just completely crumble and a communist state rise from the ashes in a few really brutal years. So let's get into it. Right, so here's the big question. How does an empire, one that's been around for 300 years, just fall apart? Well, the answer really kicks off with World War I. It took all these crises that were already simmering, over land, food, basic human rights, and it just lit the final fuse. The whole system, and the people in it, were pushed way, way past the breaking point. And to really get how this all went down, you gotta look at the year 1917. I mean, this is our roadmap. We're not talking about one revolution here, but two of them, crammed into a single year of just absolute chaos that would end up reshaping the entire world. Okay, let's dive into part one, the final catastrophic failure of the Tsar and the whole Romanov dynasty. So as Russia is just getting hammered in World War I, Tsar Nicholas II makes a truly disastrous decision. He decides, you know what, I'll be commander-in-chief, and heads off to the front lines. This personally ties him to every single military defeat. And who does he leave in charge back home? His German-born wife, while Russia is at war with Germany. Yeah. Not a great look. So with the Tsar gone, this power vacuum gets filled by the Empress and, of course, the infamous mystic Grigory Rasputin. His influence just shredded whatever credibility the monarchy had left. I mean, his murder was this wild story involving poison, bullets, and being dumped in a frozen river. His assassins were supposedly just shocked he wouldn't die, asking, how is he still alive? Which honestly only reinforced the feeling that the whole regime was completely rotten to the core. By February 1917, the country was literally starving. A protest on International Women's Day that started with demands for bread just exploded. Soon, you have 250,000 people flooding the streets of the capital. The uprising was so massive, so unstoppable, that even the soldiers who were sent to shut it down just dropped their weapons and joined the crowd. At this point, his capital is in total chaos, and his own generals are telling him, it's over. Nicholas had no other choice. He abdicated the throne. And just like that, 300 years of Romanov rule, poof, it vanished. Russia was left without a ruler for the first time in centuries.
But you see, the Tsar leaving didn't solve anything. It just created a whole new crisis. Now there's this massive power vacuum, and you've got two competing governments, both claiming they're the ones in charge.
And this is the central conflict for the rest of the year. On one side, you have the official, but pretty weak provisional government, and on the other, you've got the Petrograd Soviet, this powerful grassroots council of workers and soldiers who had the real power. They controlled the army, the factories, everything. It's like having a car with two steering wheels, and no one's actually driving. Now, into all this chaos, Germany sees a golden opportunity. They know there's one guy who can shatter this fragile balance for good: the exiled revolutionary Vladimir Lenin, leader of the Bolsheviks. They were the most radical socialist faction. So, what do the Germans do? They stick him on a sealed train and ship him right back to Russia, basically using him as a human weapon to destabilize their enemy from the inside. And Lenin, man, he did not waste any time. He gets there and he just cuts through all the complicated political talk with these simple, powerful promises. He offered exactly what people were desperate to hear: peace, land, bread, and all power to the Soviets. Meanwhile, what's the leader of the provisional government, Alexander Kerensky, doing? He makes a fatal mistake. With literally everyone screaming for an end to the war, he does the exact opposite. He launches another huge military offensive. And, you guessed it, it failed spectacularly, destroying what little credibility his government had left. This colossal failure just rolled out the red carpet for Lenin and his Bolsheviks. It was their moment to make a move and seize power for themselves. And if you thought that last mistake was bad, Kerensky's next one was even worse. He gets paranoid about a military coup from his own top general, Kornilov, so he panics. And what does he do? He frees the Bolsheviks he'd locked up and gives them weapons to defend the city. Well, the coup just fizzles out on its own. But now the Bolsheviks are armed, they're organized, and they look like the heroes of the revolution. And they had absolutely no intention of giving those guns back. So this brings us to the October Revolution, and you really have to see the myth versus the reality here. Soviet propaganda for decades painted this picture of a heroic, violent battle. The truth, it was more of a quiet takeover. The Bolsheviks basically just walked into government buildings and train stations and found them empty. The government had already fallen apart.
But here's the thing. Seizing power, that turned out to be the easy part. Holding on to it, well, that was going to plunge Russia into years of horrifyingly brutal civil war.
Any dreams of a democratic future were just shattered almost immediately. They held nationwide elections for a new assembly, and the Bolsheviks lost. So what did Lenin do? He didn't accept the results. Nope. He just sent in armed guards and shut the whole thing down. The dictatorship of the proletariat was pretty quickly just becoming a regular old dictatorship.
And that move sparks the Russian Civil War. It was the Bolshevik Reds against the Whites, and the Whites were just this fractured, disorganized mess of everyone else. You had monarchists, liberals, socialists, all with different goals. The Reds, though, they had a single ruthless command under Leon Trotsky, and they controlled the country's industrial core. That unity and geography gave them a massive edge.
The Bolsheviks won, but the cost, it's just unimaginable. Just look at these numbers. 5 million people starved to death. 3 million died from disease. Tens of thousands were executed in what was called the Red Terror. The Tsar and his entire family, kids included, were murdered in a basement. By the end of it all, the nation was just utterly destroyed.
So the new Soviet Union is officially born, but Lenin's health is failing after a couple of strokes. And lurking in the background, a new, far more sinister figure, someone once called a gray blur, began his quiet, methodical climb to absolute power.
Yeah, while all the rock stars of the revolution, like Trotsky, were in the spotlight, Joseph Stalin took what everyone thought was a boring desk job, general secretary. But he knew its real power. It gave him control over every single party appointment. So, patiently, methodically, he filled the whole government with his own people, building this unshakable power base from the bottom up. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was already too late. In his final days, Lenin, stuck in bed, he realized the huge mistake he'd made. He actually dictated a last will, warning the party about Stalin, calling him too rude and cruel, and urging them to remove him. But it was too late. I mean, think about it. The one person in charge of all of the party jobs was Stalin. And that brings us to our final, pretty heavy question. The revolution started with these beautiful promises of peace, land, and bread, right? A cry for liberation. So how on earth did it end here, creating not a workers' paradise, but one of the most brutal and totalizing dictatorships in all of human history?